everyone. So today we're going to be feeding the composting systems that are part of the Compost Engineering Challenge, and I'm going to explain to you how those are done right now. We've collected veggie scraps from New Leaf, just a bunch of different greens. Here we have a compost bin that is from my house, and this is what we're going to be using to feed the compost tumbler. And we're making sure to sort out onions and any other foods that the worms can't digest. Here we have the compost pail. This is what we're using as the measuring system. This is roughly 20 cups, and you'll see shortly how much each system is fed. The compost maintenance crew chops up the veggie scraps into 1 to 2 inch pieces so that the greens can break down more quickly and become readily available for the worms. The systems are fed just once a week to allow for the process of decomposition to take place. Okay, so we're gonna pull back the paper here. The greens from last week have started to decompose in here. And this is a good sign that we're ready to feed again. We're gonna do 3 pails worth of the greens that we just chopped up. So I'm just gonna pour these in evenly and then come back with 2 more buckets full. We're going to put a layer of sawdust over it, and the sawdust will be just about 1/3 of this, and that is because we're only doing a proportion of 8:1 of greens to browns in this feeding, because we're trying to hit a target carbon to nitrogen ratio of 30:1. So that means we're ending up with a lot more veggie scraps than sawdust because of how carbon rich sawdust is. So you need a lot more nitrogen material in order to counter all the carbon. So now for the 5-gallon bucket system. Here I have my greens in the compost pail. It's just 2 handfuls worth. Just gonna take off the lid, covering here, and sprinkle that in. This one we're only doing at a 1:1 proportion of greens to browns, because that is what they do at Gray Bears, their vermicompost systems, and they produce really great worm castings. If we were to feed it more greens, if we were to feed it at the same amount that we are the other systems, it would probably be creating a lot of moisture, since it's already creating a lot of moisture with just the amount of greens that we're putting in. And what we're also going to add in is coffee grounds. This is the only system that we're putting coffee grounds in. I'm going to throw in about just 1 handful, and this is great for regulating odor and dealing with pests, and so I'm going to work that in a little bit. So in this system, we've noticed a lot of mites have been getting in, and so to deal with the mites, we've been putting in some diatomaceous earth. You can see right here all these little guys. These are all the mites. To deal with that, I'm just going to grab a little bit of this diatomaceous earth, and I'm just going to sprinkle it in, put it over like that, and that's it. Okay, so now we're going to be feeding the composter in place system. This one is fed the same amount as the continuous flow, which is 3 of these compost pails. So I'm going to go ahead and add this in. As we've been using sawdust as our brown, we've noticed that it's caused problems when we're thinking about both carbon nitrogen ratio and the moisture levels. So if you want to maintain like an ideal carbon nitrogen ratio in the range of like 25:1 to 30:1, and also want to have good moisture levels, of course, then you might want to think about using a different brown besides sawdust because of how carbon rich sawdust is. So using something like shredded paper or cardboard or dried leaves may make more sense, since there isn't as much carbon in it, and because of that, you'll be able to use more of it to take up that excess moisture. And also, when we started out with this system, we initially, before feeding it at all, we had put in a layer of soil. We had some dead lettuce starts, and it was just a lot of
dead green and soil that we just had laying around. So we just coated the bottom of the system with that layer, and then ever since then we've been just doing the repetitive layers of greens and browns every week during our feedings. So now it's time to feed the compost tumbler, and with this system we just have the scraps that I generated at home, and I'm in a household of 3, so usually we have about this amount of scraps. It's usually the same every week. There we go. You just add your greens and browns. You're just gonna spin it about 5 times, and this is the way the compost is being turned, and so you want to turn it regularly as well, but not too much, or else it slows the process of decomposition. So I just wanted to clarify that the compost tumbler is actually not an official part of the Compost Engineering Challenge, and that is because it was not designed by a student, it was not engineered, and its purpose is mainly to serve as a compost standard and something that the other systems' compost can be compared to. So here's our bag of sawdust, store-bought sawdust. Here I'm just gonna fill it up to about 1/3 of the way full, since this is going to be going in the continuous flow system. Can be problematic in a way is that it takes a long time to break down. So when choosing your brown, you also want to think about that, is that sawdust is going to take a lot longer than shredded paper and dried leaves. So you're just going to come in and sprinkle it on top like you did with the greens. So we will now get into feeding the other composting systems their respective quantities of sawdust. The 5-gallon bucket system is fed about 2 handfuls of sawdust to stay in line with the 1-to-1 proportion of greens to browns. Each handful is about 2 cups worth, so the 2 handfuls is equivalent to 1/5 of the compost pail. The composter in place system is fed 1/3 of a compost pail of sawdust, just like the continuous flow vermicomposter. And lastly, the compost tumbler is fed about 3/5 of a compost pail of sawdust to meet the 1-to-1 proportion of greens to browns. Some 1, 2, and you're gonna do that 5 times. Okay, and that concludes the feeding. Thank you for watching.